going to paint the whole of the canvas light blue. So mix a lot of light blue and start painting the whole canvas from the top to the bottom with light blue. And you can mix your paint as you paint down. It doesn't have to be all one solid blue color. You can have mixed blues in there. Like that. So I say take your biggest brush, because you're going to paint as fast as you can to cover all of this. We will wait for all this to dry before we put our cherry tree on. So when you've done your whole picture and everything is painted, we're going to put some hills in. Let's put our hills in, and the hills are a little bit more blue in your light blue, so you make a slightly darker blue. So I'm putting a bit more blue, a touch more blue in there. Make it a bit darker. And these are beautiful, interesting Chinese hills in the background. So I'm going to put one hill with that light, with that blue that's a little bit darker than the background blue. I'm going to put that hill in here, and they come to almost a point. So my hill is going to look like that. And if you start painting down into your background, it'll blend down into the background if your background's still a bit wet. So that's my first hill. The hills in the front are going to be a bit darker than that again. So I'm putting some more blue into my sky mix. And I'm going to do 2 more hills. This hill here, I'm going to make probably from this part of my canvas there, and I'm going to take that off the side of the canvas. Still has a bit of a point to the top of it. And I'm going to bring that down over the background hill. Because it's slightly darker, it looks like it's in front. And then I'm going to paint blue down and blend it in. So I'm not adding any more blue to my brush. It's going to blend down. And if it doesn't blend nicely, put some more water on your brush. And then take some of that water off on a cloth beside you, and then use that wet brush to blend the color in. So you just brush over your hill until it blends down, makes it a soft blend going down. Let's put another hill in. Let's put one on the right-hand side of this one. I'm going to make it a little bit taller maybe, and bring it down in front of these two, like that. Take that off the right side of the canvas. And then blend that one down. So now that goes over this hill. It looks like it's a little bit more in front. And I'm going to make that hill blend down. Like that. So this one in the background starts to fade away. We need the foreground where our tree is sitting. So we're going to do a hill in the very front here where our tree is sitting. And I'm going to put black only on that brush. So I've washed my brush off and I've cleaned it so that there's no more blue on that brush. And I'm going to do a hill in the front in black. Now this hill, it's your hill. You can make it look like yours. Mine is going to come up a little from the left-hand side of the canvas to a bit of a point. And then I'm going to make my hill go off to the right-hand side of the canvas like that. Now you see what I've done with my hill. I've given it some interesting rocky features. So it looks like there could be some rocks on this hill. Maybe make it a bit higher. And then I'm going to paint everything black down below. So the whole of the bottom of the canvas is going to be black, or your paint or your paper. Now that comes up a bit. We've got some very interesting shapes here now. So the bottom part of my paper or the canvas is all black. And because it's your hill, you don't have to follow this, and you can make it wobbly. You can see I've got wobbly bits, and that's all good because hills are meant to be wobbly and have lots of rocks and trees and bits and pieces on them. Like that. I've got my round brush, only black. We're going to do our tree in silhouette. Now the thing to know about trees is that no tree is straight. So if you've got a wiggly tree, it's actually perfect. In fact, these trees have got bobbles coming off them. So if you paint your tree, always remember it's thicker at the bottom, thinner as you go higher. Your branches get thinner. So always start from the bottom and then start getting thinner as you go higher. I'm going to start with my trunk, and I'm going to put my tree, see this is a flat bit around here in the middle here. I'm going to start my tree from about there where my tree grows, and my tree is going to do some interesting shapes like that as it grows up. So my tree's got a few interesting twists and turns. That's my trunk. But thicker at the bottom. Plant it nicely on your hill. And the interesting thing about these bubbles that you have, the wiggles and the bubbles in your tree, is that you can grow branches from those. In fact, they do have branches coming from little wiggles and bubbles on your tree. So I'm going to make my tree trunk go to about there. And you can see it's starting to get a bit thinner than the bottom. If it's fatter there, you're going to have to make it fatter all the way down. So try and keep your branches thin. You can always make them thicker. It's harder to get them thinner. Let's put a branch coming out of my trunk going off this way. And I'm going to do a branch that wiggles around like that. Now that's a bit thinner than my trunk. And as it goes further away from the trunk, it gets even thinner. So I'm using the tip of my brush. The further away I go, the lighter I press with the brush. And wobbles are all good. So if you've got a wobbly branch, that's perfect. I'm going to make another branch, do some curves coming down like that. Coming from there. That curves down and gets thinner as it goes away from the trunk. Let's put another one. Starts from about there and it wiggles down towards the trunk like that. And joins the trunk there. And then I'm going to take my trunk, perhaps up a little bit higher in between these mountains here, and make that join in my tree come down to about there. Your trees are all your own. Where you put your branches, your choice. But if you make the branches thick, you're going to have to make the trunk thick. And where they join, they have to be thicker than all the rest of it. So I've got a few bubbles coming off here. I'm going to put a few more branches that do some shapes going that way. Let's do a branch coming off that one, going slightly higher. This one too. Make this grow a branch and join to where my tree does a little bit of a wobble there. So my branch will join that. I think I'm going to do another one that goes to about there and joins this branch there. And then as you see, as you go higher into your tree, they get thinner and you can even cross them over each other. Let's do some more coming off this one here. So each little branch now is getting thinner. Let's put a few more on there. And they don't grow opposite each other either. So my branch, if I'm growing a branch from here, I'm going to grow one slightly higher than that or lower. I can put another branch that goes over this lot. They do grow over in front of each other and behind each other, so they will cross. And maybe another one that goes that way. Don't want to do too many. But my cherry tree is starting to take shape. Let's put a few small branches coming down here because my cherry tree is growing over this way. So a few small branches, twigs almost, coming over there. And some small ones. So you can see now very much so that as the branch grows away, as you grow your branches away from the main trunk, they do get a lot thinner. And I've made mine crossover. And wherever you see that there could be a gap in your tree, you can grow another branch or a twig. As I say, not too many. You don't need too many. Let's put a few more on this side here because these ones are a little bit lonely. A few thin twigs over there. Top of these branches, like that. And I think I've probably got enough now that I've done that. I've got enough to start putting some cherry blossoms on. Now the cherry blossoms will grow quite low down, so let me put a few branches down here. One or a few little twigs down there. So my trunk is nice and thick. My branches start getting thinner and the twigs are even thinner on top of those. And if you want to move, when you start getting into your twigs, if you want to move to a smaller brush, do that. If you want to have a bit more control, you can use a much thinner brush to put your twigs in. I use the very tip of this big brush of mine because it's a nice tip. But if you want to use a smaller brush, that's up to you. So if you take a smaller brush, put some thin twigs coming off the top of your tree. I don't want too many more, so I'm not going to do more than that. My cherry blossoms are going to cover that. But you can see that my tree now is the biggest part of this picture, and it's almost covering my mountains. Mountains are in the background. I'm going to use the big round brush again and just load red on. Now, the interesting thing about flowers on a tree is they don't grow on the branch. They grow on twigs that are far away from the branch. Okay, so when you put your flowers on, you must believe that it's joining a twig. So you don't start putting flowers on top of these branches. You start putting flowers far away from the branch. I'm going to put some flowers starting from here and start putting some dark red flowers with the tip of my brush, like that. But I don't want to cover all of the blue. I want some blue to show through, the sky to show through. So just start putting some red blobs, which are your cherry tree blobs, your cherry flower blobs, away from your tree, outside of above the branches. And another interesting thing about trees is you don't put them in a round. I'm going to put some there. I'm going to put some here. I will join them up, but my tree is going to have an interesting shape across the top. So I'm going to put a few more here. So I'm still waiting for my black branches to dry. I think I'm going to put a few more on this side here. And let's put a few coming down the bottom here. So I'm even crossing over some of my other blobs of paint to make it look like there's a lot of cherries, the cherry blossom flowers there. And some of them are big and some of them are small. You can see I'm taking it way off the edge of my twigs that I've painted. Let's put some in the middle spaces now and across the branches. So I'm going to put some across the branches like that. I think I'm going to put a few across the middle of these branches here. They don't stick to the branch, they go across them. And what your eye can't see is that there's twigs joining up to each of these flowers. It's just too far away, so all you see are the thicker ones, which is what we've painted. You can see that what I'm doing is I've got some interesting shapes coming on the outside of my tree here. It's not a big round mess of flowers. And I can still see some blue through the middle of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to build the flowers up and make them lighter as they come to the foreground. So I've got quite a few there. This is a heavy flower bush, that one, coming off that branch. So as I say, all we're doing is that we're now going to be building up our cherry blossoms. And this is the background color. Making them go over my branch. Across the middle of my tree. I'm going to put a few more here as well. And what I'm doing is I'm making clumps of flowers. When we've finished doing all the rest, building it up with all the other the flowers on the top, we can go and fill in some gaps if we see some gaps. Because some of these flowers will be stragglers and they'll go off on their own as well. Let's put some coming down this way. My cherry blossom's got heavy branches, so I'm going to do some flowers that come quite close to the top of my mountain and make them go up towards the tree like that. So it makes it look like I've got some branches that are very heavy with flowers down this section here. Put some more here. Where I haven't painted any twigs, but I've got something that I think is going to be a big branch that's coming down there, heavily laden with flowers. There we go. Take it over the middle of my trunk as well. And some more down this side. Make it look like there's lots of flowers coming from one of these branches here. And you can see I'm not keeping it onto the edge of the twigs that I've painted out. I can't see the little tiny twigs that are joining these flowers to the tree. Let's see, I want some more coming over here. My trunk is still a little wet, so I'm going to be very careful going over. If I pick up some, and if you pick up some black, don't worry, just put more red on your brush and dab over where you've picked up the black. The black also looks a little bit like a shadow. As well. And some of these will be small, so if you want to take the little brush and put some thin, small flowers, not big flowers, you can do that. I've put some small flowers on the edges there with just the tip of my brush. Make some small flowers. Right, my cherry tree is getting quite full, which is nice with the darker flowers. And as with most flowering trees, sometimes there's a big bunch and sometimes there's nothing. So I can see some sky behind this, which is exactly what I wanted. Let's put some small ones at the top of the tree here, some small ones coming out there. There we go. So I've got quite a lot of flowers on here. Some whiter areas where I don't need the flowers, some open areas, I can see my mountain, and some clumped areas where there's going to be a lot of flowers, and I know there's a big branch there somewhere, full of blossoms. The middle of my tree's got quite a lot of blossoms. And they go over the branch. Don't forget, take them over the trunk, over the branch, so it covers some of the branches as well. And your tree can have trailing branches with little flowers coming down here like that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a few of those cherry blossoms, they've fallen onto the hill here. So I'm going to put a few red cherry blossoms around the base of my trunk. They've started to fall off. So there's some in my mount around the cherry blossom, the cherry tree itself, like that. Now you can always add more. So when you're ready, let's move on and do the lighter colors. I'm going to mix a bit of pink together. So a tiny bit of red goes a long way. Don't use too much red. Use quite a bit more white than you do the red and make a medium color pink. That's a medium color pink for me. And now we're going to put some of the lighter flowers on. So you do exactly what you did with the red ones. We're going to put some lighter pink ones on now, on top of where you've painted the red. Don't cover all of the red ones. You still need to see some of those red ones underneath. Those are the shadow ones. And I'm going to take some a bit higher than where I've painted the red here. And I'm putting them directly on top of the red ones and over the red ones so that the red ones become background. Like that. And then some of my lighter pink ones will go off and away from where I've painted the red ones, out a little bit. And it's much easier to see these white and red, the pink ones, when you put them over your branches. You see them a lot better because the white is a bit more opaque on top of your red ones. So my tree is starting to get quite full, which is very nice. Don't know what your trees are looking like. Mine's looking like there's lots of cherry blossoms on this one. If your red is still too wet, it doesn't matter if it mixes with the pink that you're putting on. It gives you a number of different colors of pink, which is what you need. Don't cover all of your tree up. You still need to see the branches and the trunks underneath and the mountains in the background. So it's not going to be one big flower blob. Lots of little tiny things that make up your tree. Especially where you've got some interesting curves in your branches. You don't want to cover those up. Those are quite nice to see through the flowers. So I'm nearly done with this pink now. I'm going to take it down over my trailing branches. These trailing branches over here. Let's put some pink on top of the red there. And around the edge. Some over here. So I think I've probably got enough of my pink ones here. Let's put a few more over this side. And you can see when you step back and have a look at your picture, you can see if you want some more flowers on them. And if there's any gaps that you want to fill in, or if there's not enough gaps. And if there's not enough gaps, you might have to put some blue back in there. But I think if you've done it with lots of space in between, you should be fine. So let's take some smaller trailing flowers off this side here. And you can see I've got clumps of flowers trailing off, like I've got a big branch of flowers coming across the bottom here. I'm going to put some of these pink flowers on the mountain as well, because some of these fell off too. So some of my pink flowers, and not too many, I'm going to put in on the mountain here as well. And around the base of the tree. And when you put your flowers around the base of the tree, don't put them equally apart. Make some of them closer and some of them further apart, so you don't have even blobs of flowers down here. You've got some that are slightly further away, some that are closer together like that clump. And I think that's probably enough for me. I'm going to put a few trailing flowers here because they are dropping as we speak. There's a lot of wind there today. So I've got a few trailing flowers down here and flying off the tree. And when you've done the pink, and that should have mixed quite nicely with the red. So you've got different colors of pink there. We're going to put white on your brush, only white. So you wash the brush off and only white, and with only white, we're going to put some highlight